so that they may be open.
That's what the Christ means in Greek.
Yes, it's from the verb chrio, to be stung by the gadfly.
Huh.
Who's the gadfly?
Who is the gadfly?
Yeah, I don't know. Socrates said he was. It's a thing they had going on. Remember, they have orgies and stuff like that, so you better buckle up, right?
But what does that have to do with the gadfly?
No, oistrous, to be stung. It's a state of mania. They call it in Greek oistromania.
Okay.
To be in an altered state.
Right.
A few moments later.
Christ is a title.
Christ is a title.
Yeah. Christ is a title. Yeah. And it's a pharmaceutical term.
Christ is a pharmaceutical term.
Where you put,
in Greek.
Yeah, yes. And it means
given
there are
like
several
5 different-
examples of it to show.
Christ is my
But it
dog.
means you can perform an incrustation, they called it, where I give you a drug. It's a drug term, and it means to be putting that thing in your eye.
So to Christ or to christen means to put drugs in your eyes.
Originally, yeah.
Originally.
As long as we're translating it accurately.
You're gonna cover this, right?
Translating it accurately.
When is the first time the word Christ is used in a different way? That's not a drug term.
It's never used in a different way. That's not a fucking drug term.
The verb chrio literally means I rub, I smear, I anoint, etc. It's used in Greek with a variety of different prefixes, similar to how we say rub in or rub on. It's a transitive verb, meaning that it takes a direct object. The rubbing action can be performed on a person, as in anointing, or the rubbing action can be performed on a thing, like an ointment. Greek uses the suffix tos in the masculine or ti in the feminine to form verbal adjectives that describe things or people that undergo an action or process. This gives us the adjective Christos, which can refer to a thing that has been rubbed. This yielded terms like Christon pharmakon for a topical medication. Christos is also used as a title, anointed one, or the Christ, which is simply a transcription or transliteration of each Greek letter without the masculine ending os. The usage of the term chrio to mean sting is illustrated in Aeschylus's Prometheus Bound. Here he says, "A gadfly is stinging me again, wretched me." He needs to refer explicitly to the gadfly, istros, because the verb chrio doesn't actually encode the meaning gadfly. It simply means sting. Aeschylus again uses the verb chriousa to mean sting, and he says specifically, chriousa kendrisi, pricks me with stings. It's clear from this context that he's not talking about anointing or rubbing. He's specifically talking about stinging. This is how we differentiate between the different usages of this verb. Aeschylus continually uses the verb chrio in contexts where it's clear that he is not talking about rubbing. Io describes being pricked by the gadfly's fiery dart. Istrudardis chri mapiros. Aeschylus also uses the noun miops to refer to the gadfly. Aeschylus uses many interesting compound words to refer to the gadfly, but he's not talking about drug use.
So how come when we type in this word here, it only pulls up this, to be rubbed on and used as ointment?
Because this is the generic sense.
Yeah. Just gotta
but
click.
then in
click.
different contexts, it can have more specific reference.
This was from line 516 of Euripides of Hippolytus. The Greek is very simple. So that's a sentence in Greek, and he's saying translated, it means what kind of drug is it? Is it a Christ or a potable? Potable means to drink it.
Yeah. So is it topical?
Or is it
something you
Right.
consume? Euripides has no bearing whatsoever on how the author of the Gospel of Mark or how Paul were using the term Christ.
This is the nurse and Phaedra talking, and just a long story short, the nurse is saying, "Hey, I know what you want, man. You want that guy. She wants her stepson, baby, because this dude is hot.
What the?
Right? He's hot. And so is she, because she's younger than her old, ugly husband.
Euripides.
Her
Oh, okay.
stepson
Yeah.
is gorgeous. And what she say? The nurse says, I know how we can get it. We can drug him. We can drug him. We can bamboozle his mind. Look at that 1, 2, 3, 4, fifth line down into the line. Blah, be friend on. What are we doing? We're affecting people's minds with drugs that you are Christing. Look at the very bottom. Phaedra says, Potera de Christon e poton to pharmakon. What kind of drug is it? Is it a Christ or is it a drinkable? Yeah. Is it something that you're going to Christ or is it something you're going to drink? Which kind of drug is it? There is no Christ, people. Take it down. There is no Christ that is not a drug. Remember that. There is no gospel that is not a drug term. There is no mystery that is not a drug term. There is no baptism that is not a drug term.
Considering how much Hillman loves to cite this specific section of Euripides' Hippolytus as a proof text for his interpretation of Christon pharmakon as a so-called drug term, it's rather astounding how poorly he reads this text. He's either failing to understand the Greek, or he does understand it and he's intentionally lying about it. But anyone can simply pick up a translation of Hippolytus and judge for yourself if you don't know Greek. Hillman interprets lines 507 to 515 as Phaedra's nurse proposing to drug Hippolytus with a love potion that will bamboozle his mind and affect his mind with Christing drugs. But the text actually says the exact opposite of what Hillman portrays. This is a common theme of Hillman's performance when he translates Greek texts. The nurse informs Phaedra that she has love medicine, therkteria erotos, that will free Phaedra from her malady, which will neither cause her disgrace nor will it harm her mind. Ute peskris, ute pivlavi phrenon. Ute is repeated twice because it means neither nor. It's one of those clauses you usually learn in the first few chapters of a beginning Greek textbook. It's not ambiguous or difficult. The nurse is reassuring Phaedra that the love charm will not harm her mind. Hillman sees the word vlavi, meaning harm, and immediately jumps to the conclusion that the nurses want to harm Hippolytus's mind with a drug. But the nurse is clearly saying the opposite here. The charm is meant for Phaedra to use. It's not meant to be administered to Hippolytus. In the next line, Phaedra is simply asking the nurse what kind of love charm, therkteria erotos, the nurse is describing, namely how it's to be administered, as a topical ointment or as a drinkable potion. Potera de Christon y potonto pharmakon. And in response, the nurse replies that she doesn't even know. Hillman is making a mound out of a molehill by translating the word Christon as Christ with a capital C. This makes no sense. Translators should render Greek texts into other languages so that readers will understand what the author originally meant. That's why competent translators render Christon as ointment here, because that's what it means. If Christon is a drug term in Greek, then the word rub is also a drug term in English. Christon simply refers to something you rub, because that's what chrio means. There's nothing special going on here. Hillman is just making stuff up and deceptively butchering his sources.
What do you think of that,
Euripides
Danny
is
Jones?
rolling in his grave.
I want to hear from
The
you.
LSJ lists a variety of meanings of the term pharmakon, which can be used to refer to drugs or medicine. They can be used in a negative sense to refer to potions, charms, spells, enchantments, and they are used in a positive sense to refer to remedies and cures. The usage of the term salvation with respect to pharmaka means that it is a saving drug, a life-saving drug. The LSJ also documents the use of pharmakon as means of producing soteria. In other words, a life-saving medicine has salvific effects. This is the same word for salvation that we find in the New Testament, but it is used in a different sense here. One ancient commentary on Homer actually distinguishes between 3 different types of medicine. We have epipasta, which is a topical medication, probably a kind of paste that you apply to the skin. We have Christa pharmaca, which are for anointing, and we have potima pharmaca, which are drinkable. Here we find an example of Christa pharmaca where the Odyssey is referring to smearing arrow points with poison. In the context of Homer, this poison is explicitly described as a deadly drug, a pharmakon androphonon. In Strabo, we find the use of the verb enchrio with the prefix en, used to describe a monkey accidentally smearing his body with bird lime, in particular around the eyes. There is no medical or ritualistic application here. Plato uses the term enchrio metaphorically to describe the internal sensations of yearning and growth within the soul, comparing it to a pricking or irritation within the body. Claudius Elianos distinguishes between remedies against poison using the terms pomata and chrimata, talking about remedies that can be drunk and remedies that can be applied to the skin. And he also uses the verb enchrio in the aorist passive participle, saying spells too can mitigate poison injected by a sting. Chrysostom also bifurcates between ointments and potions, Christa pharmaca and pota pharmaca.
Now, I'm going to give you my translation, which is going to differ from modern, or at least classically important translations, and I'll show you. One of them is by Browning. Here's the Browning translation. Yeah, and here and there, heaven high, the torch uplifts, flame medicated with persuasions mild, with foul admixture unbeguiled of holy unguent, from the clotted chrism, brought from the palace, safe in its abysm. That, by the way, Robert Browning made up that word, right? Which is something, yeah, he did. Chewy's looking at me like, are you kidding? No, he had to find something to rhyme chrism, right? Right. So he just made it up. But I'm going to give you my translation, right? So here and there, this very tall Amazonian, what is she doing? She's waving her torches because these are night rites that the priesthoods are involved in, right? You realize, right? We caught her right in the act of the rites. And what is she? Look at that 4th line down. Pharmasomene. Pharmasomene. Covered with drugs, under the influence of drugs. What kind of drugs? The royal drug that comes from her innermost recesses. The holy Christing. Powered by that painkiller that causes us to be softened. She is covered with the drugs. She is Christing. She is Christing. What is that pharmos? So I just want you to be in there. I want you to be in there and realize it means treat by using pharmaca, generally treat, right? And it talks about Homer. So it goes all the way back to Homer. We got it connected with methu, which is where we get drunken or intoxicated. And it means number 2, to enchant or bewitch by potions or filters. Now, remember, when they say enchant or bewitch, they've taken you into the back alley.
There
right?
it is.
That enchantment.
That's his
that
source.
Enchantment is
what we
a
just saw.
change to your mental state. And remember what these people like Clytemnestra are doing.
LSJ tells you.
They're putting the purple in their hair.
Hillman's blatant mistranslation of Aeschylus should give anyone pause if they take him seriously as a classicist. Here his translation is describing Clytemnestra as being covered with drugs and under the influence of drugs. Hillman insinuates that the antecedent of the adjective pharmasomeni is Clytemnestra, and his translation reflects this. He says that Clytemnestra is covered with drugs, under the influence of drugs. That is not the case. He translates chrima as Christing, even though that is completely nonsensical. If you look at the complete text of Agamemnon, lines 83 to 96, it becomes very clear that Clytemnestra cannot be the antecedent of the adjective pharmasomeni. Anyone can clearly see that the antecedent is lambas. And if you look at any standard translation from Browning or Summerstein or Smith, they all display an awareness that the antecedent of medicined or flame medicated is the flame itself. It's the torch itself. The LSJ entry makes this explicitly clear.
Look at the Epichristos. I love this. Smeared on, right? Painted, right? Give me the next one. There's a companion flower there. I love that. They don't need to see that one. And here's the Christos. I just want you to see it, people. Look, here is the word Christ. Danny Jones, please look at this word. You can see it in the Greek, and it says in Christ station. And it's something that you rub into somebody. And where do you rub it? Look at the Greek in the blue. It's in the blue. Aestus ophthalmus. Oh, isn't it? Greek is so sexy. Ancient Greek. Modern Greek is not ancient Greek.
When the verb chrio is used with the prefix en, it implies to rub in. We say that in English as well. It just means to anoint, chrio, in a way that is a bit more thorough, en chrio, to anoint or to anoint oneself. And this form of the verb is used in classical literature to refer to stinging and pricking.
Look what's happening, people. Now, for those of you who don't believe me, I know there's going to be someone out there, even though I put this up, this is for that dude. Hey, guy, you who are sitting out there, I know you're thinking this. You're going to be like, I'm going to write him an email and I'm going to ask him, where's your source? You're looking at it. You're looking at it. Are you ready? We're talking about people who are really, really, really Christing parts of their mouth with poop. How do you get like totally poop mouth in antiquity? How do you get poop mouth? Dude's got poop mouth. You know what I mean? I'm sorry. Don't be scientific about this. He's Christed on his mouth. This is application, people, right? You're applying. You're using that applicator, that alabastron, whether it's human, whether it's flesh or not. Eat my flesh. Right. Sorry. That was Jesus. Eat my flesh and drink my blood. Remember? That was the game. Galen's just describing the medicine. And what happens? You know, you got to be Christed with the poopies.
This reference by Galen is severely mistranslated by Dr. Hillman. Galen is conveying a second-hand account written by Xenocrates of people who are ingesting excrement and smearing it around their mouth and inside their throat. But the passage further down is actually referring to smearing one's body with the excrement. The term soma means body, not stoma, which means mouth.
Christing. You wanted to see what Christing was. Let's look at what Christing is. Here we come. Yeah. What is the Christ?
What is the Antichrist?
What is the Christ, if you have to know the Antichrist, you have to know the Christ.
Right.
It's a Greek word. For applying a drug to your eyes.
The LSJ entry for the verb chrio reinforces the understanding that this verb is really not that special. It generally refers to the act of rubbing or anointing and has a lot of different interesting usages. One of the most interesting usages is listed in definition number 3, which is wound on the surface, puncture, prick, sting. It is used in some contexts to refer to the sting of the gadfly, but only when the gadfly is explicitly mentioned as the thing that is doing the stinging. Middle Liddell reinforces these main categories of the use of the verb chrio. The BDAG lexicon of the New Testament does not include the meaning sting under the definitions for chrio because it simply is never used that way in the Bible. If there were a context where it was used that way, it would include it as one of the acceptable definitions. BDAG omits this definition because it has a narrow scope focused on biblical literature and is not concerned with the classical usage of this term to refer to sting. The LSJ offers several definitions of the adjective Christos, to be rubbed on, used as ointment or salve, as opposed to pistos, something that would be drunk. LSJ also makes it clear that of persons, it means anointed and gives citations from the Bible of the biblical usage of the term. The authors of the LSJ understood this very well, even though they are also fully aware that the term Christos can refer to something that is rubbed on, like the topical application of a drug. That is not a controversial view. The Cambridge Lexicon of Classical Greek also reinforces the definitions that are most common for this verb and includes the usage of stinging that is commonly associated with a gadfly sting. In Revelation 3:18, the verb enchrio is used to describe the anointing of the eyes with eye salve, kolurion. This is a completely uncontroversial use of the term chrio. It makes no sense to translate this as Christing simply because it uses the verb chrio. This is simply the way Greeks describe rubbing something in the eyes.
Example. So we have chrio here. So this is the abbreviation of the LSJ entry that has, do you see it? Do you see my screen?
Yeah,
My
I see it.
screen, right?
Yep.
Yeah. So we have like commonly, so to anoint, first definition, rub or smear, commonly with oil or unguents, often after bathing, and it's a reference to Odyssey 4:2-5:2, and I don't have that example, but there's no reason to doubt that LSJ is classifying it correctly there. Then we have, anointing for the dead, anointing a body with oil. Is that a drug? No, but it's Iliad. It's the Iliad, right? So that's the oldest Greek text we have, aside from his inscriptions. We have Euripides, metaphorically, to poison the arrow with desire. Not with ink, but with the death smear of the pen. So we were just talking about like rubbing, anointing himself, Odyssey, Hesiod. Hesiod is another, 8th century text, anointing oneself. So here we have no drugs, no medicine. This is just, maybe there's maybe some of these people are anointing themselves with medicine, like fair enough, but that doesn't make this a drug term. You can't look this up in a lexicon and find like drug term. Definition A, B, C, you can anoint yourself with drugs. You can anoint yourself with poop, right? He makes a big deal out of an example we can go over where people are smearing feces. I don't know if it's human feces or what, but they're smearing feces on their bodies and their mouths as a therapeutic method that Galen talks about with revulsion. Galen is saying, someone told me that there are people that are doing this. It's really disgusting. And Hillman just digs into this. Like they're Christing. They're rubbing feces on themselves. Like people did that, after COVID too. And then we have, consecrate, right? This is still, we're in LSJ. We're in his favorite lexicon, right? This is just
so just clarity here. So feces is not a drug.
Yeah. It's like, that's the thing. If somebody rubs themselves with feces, is the word rub a poop term, right? If somebody rubs themselves with lotion, or like if somebody rubs themselves with cooking oil, is rub a culinary term? I was recently alerted of a new example of it that was not from Plato and was not from Aeschylus. So I was wrong in the video. I said that it's only in Plato and Aeschylus as far as I was aware. I'm aware now of additional examples. I can't remember which one it was. But you can see paint with pitch, asphalt, smear shields with red dye, anoint with oil, anoint someone as a king. And then there's, 4 Kings 9:3, LXX, to consecrate, right? This is like Judeo-Christian usage of the term, right? This is not particularly, this doesn't resonate with Greeks. And then this is Middle Liddell, which is an older version of the LSJ again. Anointing, rubbing, smearing. This is just the kind of stuff. Lots of examples. BDAG, obviously, Hillman's audience has been programmed to reject BDAG or ignore it or not know what it is. But BDAG documents biblical and sort of extra biblical usage. There's usage that's relevant to the Bible. And then you have enchrio, like to anoint, right? This is the combination of in rub in. In English, we say to rub something in, right? To rub it a bit more thoroughly. Again, anointing yourself could be used for a prick or a sting. To smear words with deceitful rumors, right? That's a metaphorical use that has nothing to do with drugs. Again, you see in the Danny Jones interview, supposedly every single instance of the word chrio is a drug reference. Like there are drugs everywhere. If you put those goggles on, you see drugs everywhere. The metaphorical usage of that in Lycophron 1455, go look it up, to smear words with deceitful rumors. That is, you cannot in any reality construe that as a drug term. And of course you have Revelation 3:18, to anoint the eyes with eye salve so that you may see. I get that thrown at me all the time in these interactions to say, haha, you see, it's drugs, it's drugs, it's drugs. Well, it's obviously not always drugs. And if you're putting eye salve in your eyes to improve your vision because there's medicine that you can put in your eyes, does that mean it's a drug term? I guess. Yeah, you got me. It's drugs. And then we have Christos, obviously, derived from chrio, to be rubbed on. It refers to anointing oil. The thing is that if you are rubbed, if you're Christos, it can mean that you were a person who had something rubbed on you, or it can mean it's a thing that was rubbed on. It can go in either direction in terms it's a transitive verb that could be refer to a person or refer to an object that is rubbed or anointed or smeared, right? And that is why that ultimately ends up getting assigned to become what we call Christ, which just means rubbed. Imagine a reality in which the Bible was translated, like where we didn't transliterate the word Christos as Christ, and we just translated it as rubbed. And we said, like, Jesus is the rubbed, or, whatever, anointed, right? If we just used an English word, Hillman's rhetoric would not have any power, right? The reason it has power is because he's looking for the word Christ everywhere and finding it and transliterating it as Christ, in the Christing. And it's just, this resonates with people because they're like, oh, wow, like Galen has Christs in it, right? Galen's referring to Christ and it's all drugs. And it's like, I understand it. Look, people, like, I've watched so many hours of Hillman. I get it. If I didn't come into it knowing Greek, and I weren't inoculated with 10 years of reading Greek when I came into this, I understand the appeal. I get it. Like, I would probably, I don't know if I would get like totally brainwashed, but it would be very compelling, right? If this were just gibberish to me and somebody were pointing this out, I would be very impressed. Like, I understand why people are very impressed by this. It's just that when this is just a language you've been reading for 10 years and all of a sudden Hillman comes out of the woodwork with these crazy translations, immediately your eyebrow goes up, not because you've been programmed by academia, because I'm religious or whatever. It's just not what, he's just saying that the text says things that it doesn't say. And I tried to demonstrate that for 5 hours, and I'm sorry, some people don't have the attention span or the time to really dig into it, and they just want to comment immediately.
Right. Okay. Yeah. On that, Ammon says here,
used in a different way.